outside the synagogue. Police then say he fled the scene toward the neighborhood of Bet Hanina by car and was subsequently shot dead after a chase on foot. A handgun in the attack was seized. The assailant, identified as 21-year-old Khairi Alqa, a resident of the East Jerusalem neighborhood of At-Tur with no prior criminal history. Israeli police have now arrested his parents, and Palestinian media reporting that 13 others were arrested at his house. Medical authorities say the dead were 5 men and 2 women, ranging from the ages of 20 to 70. 2 of them identified so far, a married couple, Eliyahu and Natalie Mizhari, as well as a father and his 15-year-old son, who are yet to be named. All of this coming as Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza were seen celebrating in the aftermath. Videos showing fireworks, celebratory gunfire, drivers honking their horns, and even chanting in the street. Now, factions like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad praising the attack, but not claiming responsibility, as Khairi was not identified as a member of any armed group. Let's go to Jerusalem now, where our very own I-24 News defense correspondent Jonathan Regev is live at this scene for us. Jonathan, talk to us about the area where you're standing. That's exactly where the attack took place last night. What's going on this morning in terms of street closures and security presence?
Well, the scene here, we have to understand, Neve Yaakov, a neighborhood in the northern part of Jerusalem, a neighborhood that has become more and more Orthodox in the past few years, meaning that on any other Saturday, the scene here would be completely quiet and empty, very few people on the streets. A very different scene this time, a mix of bystanders, eyewitnesses, security forces, media, and this is the scene here, the synagogue right here behind us. You can see many people standing here in the area, and of course a very sad scene, we have to say. Many of the people that are standing, you saw them outside the synagogue, were also here last night when this terror attack took place. An Orthodox neighborhood, you could see most of the people are Orthodox, and the routine here on any other Saturday morning would be come to synagogue, go home. Very few people in the streets, very few cars driving by on any other Saturday. This time around, things are tragically much different.
And Jonathan, talk to us about what police are calling now a lone wolf attack. Talk to us about the type of weapon that was used and that they found on the assailant after the chase.
First of all, lone wolf, meaning that this is a man who was not identified with any specific organization. There's a good side and bad side to it. The good side meaning that there's no now a cell or for some kind, at least following this incident, going around and perhaps planning more attacks. The bad side of the lone wolf attacks is that these kind of attacks are very difficult to track and to identify beforehand. Why so? This man is someone that is acting alone, waking up in the morning and saying, today I will commit a terror attack. Probably does not share his thoughts and ideas with many people, probably not in social media either. When there's an organization, there's also communication, and then there's intelligence, and it could be tracked. Tracking down a lone wolf is more difficult. Regarding the weapons, we're speaking of a gun that was found here on site. It is not very difficult in East Jerusalem to be able to buy a gun. And once that is done, once there's a weapon and there's a motive, when we're speaking of residents of East Jerusalem, they carry what we call here a blue ID and an Israeli ID, giving them freedom of movement anywhere in Jerusalem or anywhere else in Israel. And at that time, it's only a matter of choosing a target. There's a weapon, there's a motive, there's freedom of movement, and tracking down those people who, as you said, there's no background, no organizational affiliation or anything. Tracking down these people before they carry out the terror act is very difficult.
I-24 News defense correspondent Jonathan Regev live for us in Jerusalem. We'll check back in with you all day long for updates. Thank you. Let's now bring in Rafael Yerushalmi, former senior intelligence officer for the IDF and a security analyst, joining us live in studio this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Talk to us about the aftermath now. What are authorities going to do in terms of security, and how do they operate when it's a lone wolf type of attack?
So first of all, it's presence, and then it's intel. Presence meaning there will be even more cops deployed in East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is under the authority of the police. In other areas it will be the army or the border guard, but this presence will be much increased, of course, to give a feeling of security to Israeli citizens, but also really to make it more problematic for copycats, because the real danger now is a copycat attack, some other young Palestinian being inspired by the act of last night and wanting to perpetrate the same murder. And then it's the intel. The intel meaning you have to explore all the possibilities. It's true it's a lone wolf, but how alone is he really? Because this revenge that he at first you are talking of a personal revenge. This young man is supposedly avenging the murder of his grandfather that took place in 1998. So how come that just last night, when there is this mounting of tensions here in the area, he decided to actually perpetrate that revenge? Maybe he was encouraged to do so. Maybe he was incited to do so. So now we also have to see where is the root of the problem, who incited him. Maybe somewhere in the networks he was recruited by the Hamas or the Islamic Jihad. He hasn't got direct accomplices, but he has a lot of indirect accomplices.
Well, following the security assessment, the IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi says that he's going to instruct to bolster forces in the West Bank along the security barrier to prepare for a possible escalation. Talk to us about what an increase of security in the West Bank, on top of what we're already seeing, could mean in terms of tension.
Well, the problem is we already have a very huge presence. More than 20 battalions are deployed in the West Bank because of the operation of breaking the wave. To bring even more border guard, for instance, it means would be calling the reserve. Calling the reserve, and the big problem for the Israeli army is that all these battalions are not supposed to do that job, that job of fighting terrorism. They are battalions, they are fighting battalions for real war, and it's a very big problem for their training, for the budget that is being spent on this operation. But they're gonna have to be this presence, because there might be an escalation. Right now, what we have to understand is that the situation is completely out of control, including out of control of the Palestinians. And the PLO doesn't control anything. The Hamas and the Islamic Jihad do not control these lone wolves. These people act on their own accord. Even what they call the Jenin Brigade is very independent, autonomous. It doesn't obey to any orders from even Hamas in Gaza. So it's completely out of control, and nobody knows what is the next horrible act that will put even more oil on the fire.
Rafael Yerushalmi, former senior intelligence officer for the IDF. We're going to keep you here with us for the remainder of the broadcast. We're going to take a short break now. This is a breaking news edition from the I-24 News Desk. More developments on the story right after the break. This is I-24 News. Stay with us.